It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. Item number 1. Information papers issued since the last meeting. The Secretariat has issued 2 information papers since the last meeting. 1. Letter dated the 28th of October this year from Mr. Steven HO on illegal fishing activities. That's LC paper number CP bracket 2 1326/2024 bracket 01. And 2. The administration's response to the letter from Mr. Steven HO. That's LC paper number CP bracket 2 1383/2024 bracket 01. So, I believe members may want to take a chance to read the letter and the response, and then we can decide whether we want to have a discussion about combating illegal fishing at the future meeting. So, members, any views? If not, I will instruct the Secretariat to include that item on the list of outstanding items for discussion, and then we can talk about that later. Now, items for discussion at the next meeting. Can we first invite the officials to join us? The Secretariat has issued the items for discussion at the next meeting. That's LC paper number CP bracket 2 1387/2024 bracket 01. At our next regular meeting, which will happen on the 10th of December, that's a Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. The government proposed the following items. 1. Proposed delineation of quality farmland as agricultural priority areas. That's the first item. And 2. Proposed retention of a time-limited supernumerary senior principal executive officer post in the food branch of the Environment and Ecology Bureau. And that's the second item. So members, for our December meeting, are we all good on those 2 items? Any comments? If we're all good, then we will discuss those 2 items. That meeting will be 2 hours, 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. We now come to item 3, briefing by the Secretary for Environment and Ecology on the Chief Executive's 2024 policy address. All electrical members are invited to join this discussion. Members, if you wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. So let's wait for the Undersecretary to settle down. 6 members are waiting to speak. Each member will get 4 minutes. That's questions and answers inclusive. So let's stick to the time limit and also allow enough time for the officials to reply to your question. If you go past the 3-minute mark with your question, I will stop you to give time to officials. If you cannot finish your questions, wait for your second round. So let's stick to the time limit. Now over to the Undersecretary, who will walk us through the paper. Thank you. Chairman, members, the food branch of the Environment and Ecology Bureau is committed to formulating, coordinating, and implementing policies on improving environmental hygiene, ensuring food safety and stable supply, facilitating sustainable agriculture and fisheries development, and enhancing animal welfare. I will now brief members on the key measures in these areas under the 2024 policy address and related documents with the aid of slides and the priorities of our Bureau this year. First, amending legislation on environmental hygiene. The current term government is committed to improving environmental hygiene so as to create a livable environment for the public. The Food and Environmental Hygiene Department will keep monitoring and cleaning the hygiene black spots at streets and rear lanes to reduce the outstanding black spots from the end of 2023 by 60% by the end of 2024. We have also completed a review of the statutory powers and penalties related to environmental hygiene. The higher fixed penalties of the first stage took effect in October last year. A comparison of the 11 months before and after these stiffer fines shows a 40% drop in the fixed penalty notices issued by the FEHD. That shows the measure produced a deterrent effect. The proposal of the second stage involving legislative amendments to raise enforcement efficiency and penalties is expected to be tabled in LegCo in the form of a bill within this year. Now, on enhancing the effectiveness in pest control through technology, the FEHD is committed to enhancing its pest control strategy. Since 2024, thermal imaging cameras have been adopted across the board with artificial intelligence for the new rodent activity survey. The data gathered from different places form the basis of more targeted measures. The RAS has been announced this year. So this year we announced the first round covering 6 months. And then we will also announce the data of the second half of this year. The RAS will be expanded next year to cover places under the purview of other departments, including public housing estates and parks. The FEHD also stepped up overnight rodent control by increasing the number of overnight rodent control roving teams to 60. New technologies and tools have been adopted to stamp out rodents. The FEHD has also extended a trial scheme for food premises to place large waste containers in rear lanes. The situation of most priority rodent black spots has improved greatly. The FEHD will continue to pursue the cross-sectoral, territory-wide anti-rodent action by rallying the community to achieve greater success in pest control across the board. Now, other measures to improve environmental hygiene. The FEHD has installed new fully enclosed refuse collection facilities at 259 rural locations. These devices come with solar sensors or pedals, which make them more user-friendly and hygienic, prevent pest infestation, and remove odor. The FEHD will put such facilities in place over time in 300 locations. The FEHD has completed full refurbishment or facelifting project for about 370 public toilets and strives to start full refurbishment for the remaining 300 or so public toilets. The FEHD will work with the Electrical and Mechanical Services Department on continuous improvements to the smart public toilet system in order to enhance hygiene and service standards. I now turn to reforming the food business licensing regime. The FEHD is committed to reforming the food business licensing regime in order to enhance regulatory efficiency and lower compliance costs for the trade. Since the first quarter of 2024, the professional certification system has been put in place to cover general restaurants, offering these premises the option of license first, inspection later. This means an applicant can obtain their full license 2 weeks earlier. Licenses and permits have also been issued electronically. We have tabled proposed amendments to subsidiary legislation in LegCo with the goal of receiving applications for the composite permit starting from early 2025. That will remove the need for separate applications for each restricted food item. We will stay attentive to the industry's needs as we constantly review and enhance our measures to roll out new schemes facilitating the food business. On amending and reviewing food safety legislation. On our review about preservatives and antioxidants in food, after giving due consideration to the views received during the public consultation, we updated the proposed legislative amendments on the 10th of October this year. We gazetted the Preservatives in Food Amendment Regulation 2024. The amended regulation will take effect on the 30th of December this year, followed by a transitional period of 24 months. The Center for Food Safety will continue to hold technical meetings with the trade and issue updated guidelines to facilitate compliance by the trade. We're working on a draft amendment to a regulation on metallic contamination in food. We briefed this panel on this proposal, which was generally supported by members in October this year. We will consult the public on the proposed amendment in due course and table it in LegCo next year. Now, the second Hong Kong Total Diet Study. The Total Diet Study is an internationally recognized method to estimate dietary exposures to food chemicals for the general population and various population groups and assess the associated health risks. This large-scale study provides a scientific basis for assessing food safety risks that makes it crucial to protecting public health. The CFS has commenced the second TDS, with its laboratory analyses and study reports due for completion in phases between 2025 and 2026. Now, modernization of markets. We are committed to developing public markets. The FEHD will continue to pursue new market projects at various stages of planning. Among these projects, the new markets in Tinshuiwai and Changguanou are due for completion in 2027 and 2028 at the soonest, respectively. We are grateful to the Finance Committee of LegCo for approving the funding for the market in the Kutong North New Development Area recently. That project is due for completion in 2028 at the soonest. On the market modernization program, the Queen Street Cooked Food Market, as the first project of the pilot scheme on stall enhancement, reopened in September this year. The FEHD will keep pursuing other items under the modernization drive. The FEHD will continue to pursue measures to foster clean public markets, which have seen an improvement in their overall cleanliness and pleasantness. I now turn to the blueprint for the sustainable development of agriculture and fisheries. Late last year, the government released the blueprint for the sustainable development of agriculture and fisheries, drawn up in partnership with the agriculture and fisheries. We will continue to pursue measures under the blueprint. Our goal is to create new opportunities for the trade, enhance its competitiveness, and help the sector modernize and achieve sustainable development while providing the public with safe and quality produce from local farms and fisheries. On fisheries, the 4 new fish culture zones designated in late 2023 will commence operation in phases. The Agriculture, Fisheries, and Conservation Department gives financial and technical support to mariculturists in need. From next year onwards, 5 units of deep-sea cages will be provided to fishermen's organizations in phases to lower the startup costs for fishermen. The AFCD will also continue to provide fishermen with proper training and support. It is actively exploring ways to simplify laws and regulations and devising enhancement measures to create favorable conditions for leisure fisheries. We also plan to turn the proposed Sanposhi Wetland Conservation Park into a pilot for a high-density, high-tech, and high-yield pond fish culture operation, with opportunities for suitable fishermen's associations to take part in running and managing the future park. On agriculture, we will proceed with the preparations for the first stage of Agriculture Park Phase 2. We will also keep pursuing the modernized Techno-Agricultural Park project through public-private partnership. The government will also adhere to the urban farming strategy and keep promoting leisure farming. The review of the findings of the consultancy study on agricultural priority areas is at its final stage. We plan to brief this panel on the proposal in December this year. We will also consult other stakeholders. To help the livestock sector build modernized and eco-friendly multi-story livestock farms, the government has reserved land for the trade to build the first such structure. Financial and technological support will also be given to the trade. Last but not least, I look forward to members' continued support for the work of the Environment and Ecology Bureau. My colleagues and I welcome questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Secretary. Now it's the Q&A session. We have 7 members who have pressed the request to speak button. Ms. Doreen Kong, Mr. Chen Hakken, Mr. Chen Chen-ying, Mr. Benson Luke, Ms. Chen Ho-yen, Mr. Tommy Chung, and Mr. Stanley Lee. 7 members. First, Ms. Doreen Kong. I would like to thank the acting secretary for giving a presentation. What gave me an impression was the total diet study. It is beneficial for the overall health of Hong Kong citizens. Also, for market modernization program, I recently went to the Queen Street cooked food market. I think people are very satisfied with the condition of the cooked food market, and I myself have also visited the market. I have seen better lighting, a better environment in general. I appreciate that. I want to ask, in paragraph 3 of the paper, it is said that the Bureau will amend environmental hygiene-related legislation. Will the government consider amending legislation allowing pets in restaurants? There have been calls for that for quite some time now, as many citizens now have pets, definitely more than before, and they treat pets as their family members. If we have legislation that is too stringent, it is not what the public wants. So the public has been calling for amendments. In February of this year, the Bureau has already announced plans to review legislation in this area. I wonder what the government's progress is at the moment. So that's my first question. I also read in the paper that the government will amend legislation to deal with some persistent food safety and environmental hygiene problems. Now, many citizens go to the north to buy groceries, and some would bring uncooked meat and eggs back to Hong Kong. This would, of course, constitute a food safety hazard. Will the Bureau step up enforcement and patrols to prevent these from happening? Also, with night rodent patrols, it is said that the number of overnight rodent control roving teams will be increased to 60. I want to ask what districts these teams work in. What is the manpower establishment? With the increase in the number of teams, will it significantly increase the cost? Thank you. Acting Secretary. Thank you. Acting Secretary, can you speak into the microphone? On allowing pets to go into restaurants. Right now, the food business regulation do not allow for dogs, but cats are allowed. We, right now, do have legislation against dogs being brought into restaurants. There have been calls for restaurants or options being more pet-friendly, allowing dogs to be brought into restaurants. But then there are also citizens who are concerned about dogs being brought into restaurants. The FEHD has received complaints against restaurants that have allowed dogs. So we are researching whether there is any room for relaxation. When reviewing the proposal, many factors will be considered, including public safety, public hygiene, the working conditions of restaurants, as well as public acceptance. We want to make sure this is accepted by the general public. As for bringing uncooked meat and eggs across the border, right now, in Chapter 132 AK, in accordance with such legislation, one must bring a health certificate when bringing uncooked meat or eggs across the border into Hong Kong. And enforcement operations have been taken against such acts. We have taken an intelligence-led approach to combat any illegal acts. At different boundary control points, there have been random joint departmental operations. We have also detection dogs that would help enforce the law at boundary control points. As for the overnight rodent control roving teams, we have them in different districts. As for the manpower establishment and cost, I will let my colleague answer that question. Thank you. We have each team 3 members. So we have been adjusting the number of teams and team members as necessary. We have seen the overnight rodent control roving teams achieving quite great results, but we will not neglect the need for daytime patrol. Sorry, I have a short follow-up question. On pet friendliness, I hope that the government can keep an open mind. We have seen in other jurisdictions pets are allowed in restaurants, but of course they cannot use cutlery of the restaurant to feed their pets. Well, we do keep an open mind. We have referred to the practices of other jurisdictions as well. When the time is right, we will communicate further with the member. Thank you. Mr. Chen Hakan. Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one is also on rodent control. The acting secretary said that we would do more with rodent black spots this year, and it is expected that 60% of the remaining and newly identified rodent black spots will be removed by end 2024. We have the overnight rodent control roving teams increased to 61 with 3 members in each team. We will also have large-size waste containers in rear lanes for temporary storage of waste, and I also understand that some innovative technologies are being used. So I want to ask, how much will all these measures cost? So we have perhaps 180 staff members working overnight. I think they will be FEHD staff members. How much will they cost, and what do you expect to achieve with the increase in the number of teams? On Veterinary Surgeons Board, in recent years, many citizens have pets, and pets, of course, get sick. There have been many complaints against vets, and we have helped follow up on these, but we have seen progress being quite slow. Let me show you some figures. I could see on the VSB website in 2023, the number of inquiries held were all cases from 2015 to 2017. So it is only 7 to 8 years later that you would deal with the relevant complaints. So we're talking about November 2024, you make a complaint against vet. Do you have to wait until 2047 to deal with my case? So I think the board's work has much to desire. Is it because of the insufficient manpower? There is a large number of cases. What is going on? Is there room for improvement? If there aren't enough people, can we increase manpower, or can we streamline workflow so that inquiries won't be held for something from 7 years earlier? And this is unfair not only to the vet, but also the complainant. And on the VSB, this was set up quite some time ago. I believe it is time for a review of the structure and work of the board. Thank you. 2 questions. Acting Secretary. Thank you. For the 2 questions, first on rodent control. For manpower and cost, I will let my colleagues supplement my answers later. On the VSB's work, I will ask the Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation to supplement my answers. On rodent control, we have taken a multi-pronged approach. We have been using technologies. We have also been using the rodent absence rate to better indicate our performance. We also have a cross-departmental working group or task force on rodent control. We have also met with district stakeholders, for example, representatives of management companies, to do more in private housing estates as well. As for the other parts of the questions, I'll let my colleagues answer the relevant questions. Yes, Director. Well, right now, we have increased the number of overnight rodent control roving teams to 60, and they are all outsourced staff members. We do not have figures for this year just yet. If necessary, we can provide such figures to the member later. Well, you can provide it to the panel in due course. Thank you. On VSB's work, Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation. Thank you. Indeed, some cases are quite complex, so it is kind of like court hearings. Legal evidence has to be examined. We will also need to engage overseas experts for advice. So for the specific cases that Mr. Chan said, indeed, there are some cases that take longer to process. This is not ideal. We do want to deal with these backlog complex cases, which is why in 2020 there was a restructuring of the board. As Mr. Chan said, we have done more with manpower and the streamlining of workflow. On manpower, for the board, we have the number of members increased to 19. We also have a vetting committee that has 18 members that would conduct preliminary investigation. We do want to streamline the workflow more, so we have been adopting a triage approach. So for the simpler cases, they will be dealt with by the preliminary investigation committee. For those that require disciplinary inquiries, then it will be dealt with by an inquiry committee. We have seen, therefore, in the past 3 years, we have dealt with 36 cases. On average, a case would take 7 months to handle. For the longer cases, it would take 17 months. But we have a new chairman of the board for a while now. We will talk to them about how we can further streamline the workflow and whether we can deal with even the more complex cases faster. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Chenying. Thank you, Chair. Regarding the PA briefing, I have 3 questions. One is also on rodent control. With the rodent absence rate, right now the rate is 95.1% in the territory of Hong Kong. But when we discussed this in March, we have some doubts about the accuracy of the figure. We have also pointed out some loopholes. We do not have the figures for the second half of the year just yet. Having heard what we said earlier, has the Bureau reviewed the compiling of the figures so as to achieve more accurate figures?
The government set out the rate in Wan Chai and Sham Shui Po. The rate is particularly low in those 2 districts. So, are there anything special with the anti-rodent measures in those 2 districts? Now, the paper says enforcement actions are taken when stallholders obstruct passageways. But last Friday at the Finance Committee meeting, we were told that under the new contract for new market, there will be rules on the operation hours of stalls. When new contracts are signed for older markets, will these new rules apply? You have to wait for the old contracts to lapse before signing this new contract? How long will it take before we can apply these new rules to all markets? Now, on private columbarium niches, starting from 2020, the paper says all applicants have been given a niche, no more waiting. So can I confirm two things? By no more waiting, does it mean people get a niche right away? I also looked up our figures. Each year, we see 50 to 60,000 deaths in Hong Kong. Will we have enough niches to cope with the number of natural deaths each year, such that people won't have to wait for the niches? 3 questions. So, first question about the 2 districts. The FEHT can tell us more in a moment. On the rodent absence rate, we pointed out the merit of this approach. This approach is more accurate with artificial intelligence. This approach also has a wide coverage. This approach also comes with a lower risk of being interfered with. Members gave us great suggestions so that we can do better. Now, for the first cycle, as the member said, the rate was 95.1%. In the second cycle, we put the data online as soon as we get them, but we need more time to finish the whole cycle. We look at more parameters than just this rate, and then we take targeted measures. We also look at the number of complaints we get, the number of live and dead rats we caught, and also suggestions from local stakeholders. From August 2023 to July 2024, the FEHD caught 72,600 live rats, up 24% from the year before. Let's also look at dead rats caught. That's 106,100, up 19%. So we have this holistic approach to rodent control. Now, the question about enforcement in markets. Now, under the lease agreements at public markets, there are clauses saying you need someone at the stall. Enforcement efforts support or enforce such clauses. For new markets, a competitive bidding process takes place, so we can improve the clauses so that we can do even better in regulatory and enforcement matters. Now, in allocating niches in private columbarium, there's an annual invitation and a monthly invitation. Everyone gets their niche. Now, but some people may not like the niche they get. In Shek Mun, that will be completed in 2025, and then we have 3 to 4 private columbaria, and we will be following up on those projects. In the years to come, we will have a steady supply of niches. When people apply for such a niche, we hope they can get the niche. So over to Mr. Yu on your approach to tallying the figures. So we stick to the same approach, but we noted members' comments last time. Some cameras may miss the rodents. So in our second cycle, that is for the second half of this year, we adjusted the positions of our cameras. We pick different spots for each cycle. When the cameras were placed too close to roads, we would miss the rats, so we placed the cameras in other spots. We also put more cameras around. Next year, we will put cameras at public housing estates and parks so that we get more reliable results. Now, on the 2 districts with low rodent absence rates, now there are 2 efforts. First, we will put more resources. This means more overnight rodent control teams because there may be more black spots. When a camera spots more rats, we look at the time when the rats show up and then we take more targeted measures to deal with that black spot. So the cameras and the rodent absence rate help enhance the effectiveness of the FEHD's efforts. Mr. Benson, look. I'm looking at paragraphs 4 to 6 of the paper. "106,100 rats were caught, up 19% from the same period the year before. This shows the multi-pronged strategy worked. The paper mentions thermal imaging cameras with artificial intelligence. There's a rodent activity survey going on. The data will be put online. People can check out the data. I looked up the data across different districts. In 17 districts, the rate is over 90%. The best district comes with 99.4%, but in Wanchai, it's 84% or so in Wanchai. Now, on social media, you can see near the Convention and Exhibition Center, near the harbor front, rats were fighting for food, and that was reported extensively. People argued some people left cat food on that spot instead. That drew dozens of rats for a feast instead. Overnight rodent control is working, but then for that kind of high-profile rodent activity, and people got concerned about environmental hygiene. And let's not forget the CNE is a landmark of Hong Kong. For such new rodent black spots, will there be swift actions to allay public concerns? Now, on the Wanchai Harbor front, I looked at this black spot. That place is not on the list of priority rodent black spots for 2023-24. So this is off the radar. What do you do about that kind of black spot? There are people feeding stray cats and dogs, leading to environmental hygiene problems. Does the government have the figures of cases where officers advised people not to do it? Does the feeding of stray cats and dogs lead to rodents? I will invite the FEHD to provide information on the questions from the member. When someone feeds stray animals and that leads to rodents, we can take enforcement actions. We can prosecute the culprit. On the figures, I'll see if the FEHD has the figures. And that place is off the list of our priority rodent black spots, what we can do. Mr. Arsene Yu. On the black spot in Wanchai, reported in the media, that place falls under the purview of several departments, and we have got in touch with the departments to take joint action. When we see people feeding stray animals in a place and the food leads to rats, we take surprise enforcement actions. 3 prosecutions followed. What matters most is that we should stamp out such irresponsible feeding of stray animals, and that will help address the rodent problem. On the black spot, this came up just in recent months, and even if a place is not a black spot, as long as there are rodents, the department follows up. We label a place as a black spot because of systemic issues. Say, the real lanes are unhygienic, and there may be food businesses disposing of waste improperly. That will require longer-term effort. When a black spot comes up all of a sudden, we analyze the situation and then we take targeted action. Ms. Chan Hao-Yan. I also have questions about rodents. I commend the government's work. There was a problem with the rodent absence rate, and that figure lacked credibility. So now new technology is in use, and that's good. But I have a problem with the rodent absence rate. We are approaching the end of the year. People have little notion how this rate works or what the rate does. You have to show people there are fewer rats. In the past, the tallying was unreliable. There was a tiered system. You have different levels in the past, and then different levels warranted different actions. Let's look at one chart. It's at 87% or so. If my kids get 87 marks on a test, I think they're doing fine, but I'm not sure what 87% in terms of the rodent rodent absence rate is good or bad. Shouldn't we keep what worked? Now, the higher the rate, the better the situation. So can the government tell us what does the figure, what does the rate mean? When does the government escalate its action? Is 85% a bad situation? So this is something the government needs to do more on. Now, I want to take up the cause of dogs. Our laws discriminate against dogs. There are already laws for owners to put a collar on their dogs, and the dogs entering a restaurant cannot exceed 2 meters in length. Food businesses are struggling. There are alfresco dining options. Dogs cannot enter food premises. Otherwise, the owner breaks the law. We have harborfront settings. We have alfresco dining options. Letting people take their dogs in will make a difference. Dogs have chips in them. They are vaccinated. Our laws are behind our times. Shouldn't we move faster with reviewing our laws? I support the blueprint for sustainable fisheries in agriculture, but the government should pay greater attention to ways to attract young people to join those sectors. So 3 questions for the Undersecretary. Now, once we have the outcome of the rodent absence rate, our colleagues look at the situation, the locations, and then they take targeted actions. We considered a tiered system for the rodent absence rate. There were 3 levels under the old system, and then each level warranted certain actions. We talked to our colleagues who gathered the data. They need data, and then they can come up with a meaningful tiered system. We have only covered 1 cycle, that's 6 months, so we will build up more data. And then we will design the tiers. We will let members know once we have an update. We will undertake this publicity campaign to let the public know how it works. Now, on food premises, we get the members' point. It takes time to review legislation. Now, what can we do in the meantime? For indoor settings, there are other restaurants, but then there are restaurants in a public place, say it's a mall, or on private premises, there is public space with tables and chairs for people and their pets. As long as it does not affect food safety, environmental hygiene, and public safety, and as long as the requirements from buildings department, fire services department are met, the persons responsible on the food premises can let people spend time there with their dogs. Now, on new blood for the agriculture and fisheries sector. Now, we are following up with the sector closely on this. Many young people got involved in this leisure fishing scheme. So we will step up the work.
All right, next, Mr. Tommy Chung. Excuse me, Chair. I want to ask, is it the case that we can ask questions for 3 minutes and they will answer for 3 minutes? Well, they can answer as long as they want to. Well, I'll stop you at 3 minutes. But if you are not asking for answers from the administration, I will let you speak for the entire 4 minutes. All right, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the clarification. Let me say this. Well, the Permanent Secretary has done really well, and I think if the Acting Secretary has, well, the previous Secretary has done really well, and I think it would be hard for you to step into their shoes. Let me first talk about with the pets issue. I have never had any pets. I do have horses, but it's not like I can bring them to restaurants. Well, with dogs, I think we have to be careful. It's not about them carrying pathogens. It's about them affecting other people. They may not bring much business either. Well, of course, it would be nice because at some point it would bring business, but then with the bringing of dogs, it's more controversial. Well, in the F&B industry, we have outdoor seating, and some dog owners would bring their pets there. But the restaurants can very well be fined for this. So I think when you're reviewing legislation, if the dogs are not going to eat, or if they can eat outdoors, that is the direction that you can take. On Columbaria, recently on Chongyang Festival, I went to visit my ancestors' graves, and in Wahab Shek, I have seen that, well, my parents are both resting in the Wahab Shek crematorium. I've observed that there are some empty spaces, and you can't really put flowers because some niches are too high up. So if you put a letter there, people can then put flowers in front of niches. But then that doesn't work for the higher niches because it can be hazardous. So why not just put niches there instead? Well, with the metallic contaminants in food, you have heard me say many times. Last time at the last meeting, I talked about hairy crabs. When you talk about risk assessments or liaising with international authorities, I don't know what international authorities you're liaising with. Well, you are now at the 3-minute mark. Well, alright, I will stop asking my questions. You may ask your other questions in the second round. Thank you, Acting Secretary. Thank you. We have always kept an open mind with the design of niches. We will review the layout of the design to see if there's any room for improvement. On the issue of hairy crabs, we have been liaising actively with mainland authorities, and we hope to make some progress really soon. Well, they are objecting to the arrangement because the standards of Japanese hairy crabs are not accepted because they would have to go back to Japan and then come to Hong Kong. Well, I think we do have something in common here. We are actively following on the issue. Is there anything that I missed? Well, on the bringing of dogs, allowing them in outdoor space. Well, we did mention earlier for some public spaces outside restaurants, for example, in shopping malls, the owners allow for pets. Then pet owners can consume takeaway food in that area. Well, it's just like that in West Kowloon. But I want to ask this for, say, Kowloon City. They have 4-story buildings. They have restaurants on the ground floor. And these owners wouldn't be like large owners or majority owners. So how can people allow for the consumption of food for pet owners with their pets? Well, I think different locations have different circumstances. We'll definitely review that in future. Sorry, Chair, I have a very short follow-up question. I don't need to speak for the second round then. For rodent control in markets, I think the department has the responsibility to do more. And I think you have to allow cats to be kept in restaurants, because if cats are kept, they can catch rats. So if you're trying to deal with rodent infestation, we should have cats kept in restaurants as well as public markets, and they will be able to catch rats. There is no need for you to install so many traps. All right, thank you for your comments. Next, Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you. Having heard the Acting Secretary's presentation, I know that the department has done a lot. There are new and existing measures. I first have some questions. We have talked about rats, dogs, and cats. We should also talk about wild pigeons, feral pigeons. So with the passage of the relevant ordinance, we have seen the situation improve. That is, of course, the doing of the department. We have achieved good results, but that is still not meeting the public expectations. We want to have less pigeons close to residential areas and environmental hygiene improved. Will you have continuous enforcement actions to make sure pigeons will be kept far away from residential areas? So we had a tiered system for rats. Do we have a tiered system for feral pigeons so that we will have pigeon black spots? It is only with such system that you can set KPIs for pigeon infestation. Now on hygiene, I also note that the department has done much, but we have seen other places making use of AI cleaning equipment. I do not see the department making use of such equipment at the moment. If the department takes the initiative and urges the contractors adopt such equipment, that would be ideal, because contractors do not proactively procure such equipment. In Sha Tin, we have already seen some housing estates piloting the use of such equipment. For example, in these seasons, we do see some falling leaves, and we have a couple of dedicated staff members deal with the falling leaves. And during noon, when the sun is the strongest, it's actually very bad for them. And for obnoxious occupations like such, if we can improve the working condition, it will really help encourage people to join the trade. Thank you. Acting Secretary, thank you. On feral pigeons, well, it is to be dealt with. It should be dealt with in the panel on environmental hygiene. With the passage of the relevant ordinance on 1st of August, we have seen the AFCD and other departments take enforcement action. And we have done much in the past few months in enforcement. We have seen an improvement in the situation in different black spots for feeding of feral pigeons. If members want further information, we can provide such after a meeting. As for the adoption of technologies in cleansing services, we have all along been taking this approach. We have been keeping abreast with the times. In previous panel meetings, we actually talked about what kind of technologies are used in cleansing services. We have also made use of equipment that would blow the leaves away. And we will, of course, review in the work of outsourced cleansing services how we can improve the working condition of workers. I'll let Mr. Lai, the Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation, supplement my answers. Thank you. With the passage of the Wild Animals Bill, we have seen different departments, the AFCD, the Housing Department, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, etc., taking enforcement action. In fact, the AFCD, we have deployed officers for over 100 times per month, and many of such operations are joint departmental operations. But I agree, continuous efforts will be needed, not only in enforcement, but also in publicity and education, to enhance awareness of those who have been feeding feral pigeons consistently. And we have been liaising with district stakeholders, district councils to enhance our publicity. And with pigeon black spots, we would need to review the situation, the number of pigeons, and we do have certain black spots identified in our work. We have seen the situation improve in recent months, but as said earlier, continuous efforts would be required. Otherwise, we would still see feeding in such black spots, and we will continue with our work in the near future on this. Thank you. Well, regarding what Mr. Stanley Lee said about the latest technologies adopted in cleansing in private housing estates, perhaps the Bureau can try to get more information to see how we can improve the work. Mr. Steven HO, thank you. I would like to first thank the administration for responding to my letter on illegal fishing activities. We do have the blueprint for sustainable agriculture and fisheries. We need to flesh out more details. While we already have the blueprint, we want to maintain the scale of agriculture and fisheries, but the working condition at sea is very bad because we have seen illegal fishing activities. And our resources have been exploited. We see inadequate enforcement. In fact, we have seen other illegal acts. If people are not doing well in fisheries, they may even go into smuggling because that would give them even more in money, for example, $2,000 per day. And they would act as lookout for smugglers. And $2,000 per day, we're talking about an income of that. So, of course, we will want to improve the situation. I have liaised with the government on the smuggling of food. We have some agreed prices. For hairy crabs, it's $500 per carton. And again, we see better income than the legal industries here. People do not earn good income right now in agriculture and fisheries. So I think the government must do more for the benefit of their livelihood, for example, license fees, as well as rents at public markets. And taking a more macro perspective, do we really have to charge rents by the square meter? We have seen the government deploying much resources on the fake stuff, on livelihood stuff. You have been quite prudent. This is not beneficial for the general public. So I think the government must make adjustments. For example, for food factory license fees, there should be adjustments. We have also seen the Agri Enjoy scheme. I appreciate this scheme. It should be a long-term effort, but then the licensing system is the old one. For premises under 100 square meters, one would be charged $3,700, but most premises would only be less than 20 square meters. So it is really not worthwhile for them to do such business. Sorry, I have only one more question. On dogs, I heard what the acting secretary said. She is quite limited by the existing system. I think there should be different types of licenses for those who want to apply for such license to allow for dogs in restaurants. You should make sure there is a different licensing system. All right, I understand. Please stop here and let the acting secretary respond.
We agree with the member. We have to combat illegal fishing because that activity affects fishermen. There are dedicated enforcement teams at sea. They use technology, they exchange intelligence with partners, they take a risk-based approach to enforcement. We provide the figures in the letter, so we won't repeat those figures. On rents, license fees, other matters the member commented on. Given the current state the economy is in, the member would like to see some relief for people in business. We note such comments. We also have to factor in the government's operation. This matter falls into the purview of different bureaus and departments, and we will pass on that comment to those departments. A question went unanswered. It's about the licenses. Licenses for food businesses. You need a new system. Ditch the old system. We noted your comment. In our future review, we will consider the member's comment. We move on to Ms. Judy Chen. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the measures under the policy address. These measures have to do with food safety. I want to focus on a few areas. First, it's not in the paper, but I raised the matter at a council meeting. It was a question. It's about the local street side eateries known as Tai Pai Tong. Maybe not everyone is a fan of such street side eateries due to hygiene reasons, but I think such street side eateries are part of our local landscape. There were many such eateries. Now there are just 17. Our economy is flagging, and we want tourism everywhere in Hong Kong. We want tourism with local features. That's all the more reasons to keep such street side eateries. So can the government be more proactive in this regard. We just have 17 such eateries. That's a puny number. But taking steps to help them will contribute to our goal of having tourism everywhere in Hong Kong, and we can tell Hong Kong story well. So can we revisit this direction? Now, I turn to food safety. I welcome the government's efforts to test food for metallic contaminants, preservatives, different kinds of contaminants. I talked to the undersecretary in private. I have been calling for easy to follow health labels so that consumers can check a label and find out quickly what's in the product. Now people have to look up different reports. We want consumers to be able to tell from a health label right away what's in the food, just like what you do with the eco-friendly labels. You put a label there saying very healthy or very unhealthy, and then you can help consumers make an informed choice. So, can we do more on this? Now, on my third point, other members commented on this. It's about pets. We have an aging population. Young couples is true children, so more people will keep pets, so more needs to be done on this. Undersecretary, 3 questions. First, food safety. Much has been done in publicity and promotion. So the Center for Food Safety can tell us more in a moment. We've noted the point about pets. We will consider them in the future. Now, on street-side eateries known as Tai Pai Tong, there are just a small number of them left. We had some in Central. We took improvement measures. People live near those eateries. There are different kinds of views on such eateries. So we have to check with the local district council to see what the local residents think. There are outdoor street-side eateries, but then we also have cooked food markets. One on Wusong Street, there's another one on Hai Phong Street. Those cooked food markets are signature places and they're popular. So we do keep an open mind about improving the situation for cooked food stalls when the conditions are right and when local stakeholders agree with this, then we can certainly consider these ideas. I welcome the measures under the policy address, especially the one about cremation and burial. Years ago, we used to complain that living people had nowhere to live, and even dead people cannot find the place to be buried. But then, in the recent years, those complaints have all gone away, so things are looking up. Green burial helps because that becomes an option. Now, on public markets, more needs to be done. Public markets are underutilized because there are no air conditioners, and then prices go up, fewer people visit, you get a vicious cycle. So you have to tackle the problem at its root. Better facilities, attract more people. If you don't need 2 markets in an area, just keep one and use the space for other purposes. Now, on environmental hygiene, black spots have been fixed, but new black spots will occur or will come up. go for stiffer penalties for littering, especially at black spots, on loading and unloading. Now that has been tidied up. Yes, I get it. We want a better cityscape, but let's also spare a thought for our businesses. Retail is struggling. So, can we go easier on loading and unloading as long as those people are not blocking the street? Now, on crabs, people bring hairy crabs from Shenzhen to Hong Kong. Is that allowed? Can people bring live hairy crabs from Shenzhen to Hong Kong? Acting Secretary. That's outside Cap 132 AK, so maybe I can invite my colleague from the CFS to tell us more in a moment. I will first take the first three questions. I thank the member for his support. We now have enough supply of niches to meet demand. More and more people now go for green burial. On private columbaria, we have processed those applications. Now, on public markets, we will have new markets. Those need funding. On the modernization of markets, we have also done much. Members also have different views on the management of markets. We consulted members on this so that we can take on board those suggestions in the future. Now, on hygiene, we note members' comments. Given the state of the economy, businesses are struggling. As we review laws on environmental hygiene, we can explore ways to do better with the legislation, and then we will present our proposal to members when the second phase comes around. Now, on hairy crabs, over to Dr. Wong. Dr. Christine Wong. For all hairy crabs sold in Hong Kong, they have to meet Hong Kong's food safety standards. I get it. Of course, you have to meet the requirements when you put out the crabs for sale. Can people bring hairy crabs from Shenzhen to Hong Kong for their own consumption? How many can they bring? We mount joint operations with the customs. When people bring large amounts of hairy crabs to Hong Kong, we have grounds for suspecting that those crabs are here for sale. We check the health certificates. Can people bring the crabs here for sale, for consumption? Our current food safety laws target hairy crabs for sale, but not for consumption. Can you allow the entry of hairy crabs from the mainland? It makes no sense for you have to import the hairy crabs from Korea, which is a detour. Mr. Scotland. We support the directions of the measures under the Environment and Ecology Bureau. We have heard different suggestions, and then the government said it would consider the comments. That's good. Now, in the paper, paragraph 12, public markets. I support the modernization drive of public markets. Different people have argued for keeping up with the times for these markets, we need not just new hardware, we also need a new approach to management. The Undersecretary has promised to look at ways and consider comments on the management of markets. Now, the FEHT rents out markets. That approach works for certain markets. Stores with a long history can attract customers, but I wonder if that approach works given the fact that so many people head north for shopping and dining, and also people buy their stuff over the internet. So I look forward to the new measures.
In paragraph 14, it is said that the Aberdeen wholesale fish market will be redeveloped and that some F&B facilities will be added. Well, I would say this. I think we can better make use of the cooked food market, and in fact, I have been talking about that for the Chengshawan market. The Chengshawan wholesale food market, right next to it, we have some really beautiful waterfront. And if you can put F&B facilities and a promenade close to Wenchai, why can't you do that for Chengshawan? What are your pain points here? And we are trying to promote tourism is everywhere. Victoria Harbour is one of our most important sites. So I think we shouldn't limit ourselves to the Aberdeen wholesale food market. We should really do more in other districts as well. The Aberdeen wholesale fish market, excuse me. Acting Secretary. We have been communicating with markets in general or markets under the MMP. We have contractors managing the markets, providing security. They would also be responsible for promotion. So you can see for the MMP markets, we have seen them doing quite well. We also heard feedback of members on the design, operations, and management. We have been collecting feedback since the design stage. We have had a variety of feedback. We will review the feedback. Once we have concrete measures to promulgate, we will discuss with members. On the Aberdeen wholesale fish market, we do have some storage or further development plans, for example, holding workshops, having an exhibition center, as well as adding F&B facilities. We have been reviewing this for the markets that cannot have an overhaul. Whether we can make good use of the environment, perhaps the waterfront nearby. I'll let the colleague from the AFCD supplement answers for this. So say for the other wholesale food markets, we will keep an open mind on this. Well, especially for Chengshawan wholesale food market, I wonder if Mr. Yu Arsene-Gil can provide more information on this. Or Mr. Mickey Lai, Director of Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation. Thank you. Well, understand what the members said. There is waterfront right next to the Chengshawan wholesale food market. And as the acting secretary said, we keep an open mind. We need to make sure, however, we do not disrupt the operations of market operators. We will definitely see if there is room for further compatibility with the environment. Well, I think the government should really think about how to revitalize the Chengshawan wholesale food market. Well, we have 5 minutes left for the discussion of this item. We have 3 members indicating their intention to speak for the second round. I ask other members who would like to speak to press the request to speak button as soon as possible. Each member will have 1 minute to speak for the second round. Mr. Stanley Lee. I will try to make good use of this 1 minute. On the use of AI equipment, I ask the administration, when procuring such equipment and services, you should make sure there are indicators for contractors to adopt such equipment so as to encourage them to make use of such equipment. In fact, I mentioned leaf blowers earlier, and that is a good example of manpower not being needed. Instead, only equipment is needed. On markets, I'm not sure how in future the plans of the Bureau would be. So for Ma On Shan, we have 200,000 in population. We do not have a single public market. So will the department consider where to put new markets? For example, on Hang On Street, we should have a market there because right now we do have a site available. Thank you. Well, on the adoption of technologies, I actually asked the administration to reach out to you later on to learn more about the equipment concerned. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you. I'll be brief also. I have some examples. For example, in the mainland, we have a lot of pet-friendly options. We have some pet-friendly malls. We have 50 of such in Shenzhen. In Bao'an Airport, they also have pet-friendly lounges. The high-speed rail is also considering how to accommodate pets. So for people going to the Greater Bay Area, they want to bring their pets. So on pet quarantine, is it possible that we can have some quarantine-free or exemption arrangements within the Greater Bay Area? All right, Acting Secretary. Thank you. We are actively considering some quarantine exemptions. We already have some views formed. I'll perhaps let the director, Mr. Mickey Lai, supplement my answers. Thank you. Recently, we have conducted some consultations on the topic. I think for pets coming from the mainland, we should be able to shorten the period of quarantine significantly. But this is two-way. It's not just about between Hong Kong and the mainland. We have also been considering such arrangement for Hong Kong and other places. We will soon have some good news and we'll report to you in due course. Mr. Benson Luke. Well, I want to ask about the blueprint for sustainable agriculture and fisheries. They have been talking about how to revamp the Aberdeen wholesale fish market, and that would be beneficial because we have been promoting tourism is everywhere as well as some further development of industries. So I want to ask, what is the timeline for the revamped markets opening? And we have been, it's kind of like Tsukiji market in Japan. We need to make sure there is convenient transportation. How will you make that happen? And if we are talking about revitalizing the Aberdeen wholesale fish market, have you consulted the fisheries? What do they think about the proposal? Can you share with us such information? Well, there is some time left, 1 minute. Will the acting secretary answer this question? Well, I'll let Mr. Mickey Lai answer the question. Thank you. Well, we are still in a planning stage and we are consulting different stakeholders. We expect to complete this early next year. We do not have a timeline for implementing the project just yet. On transportation network, we will also consider that in our planning stage. We have consulted the fisheries as well as the existing operators of the market. We have maintained communication. We have also maintained communication with district stakeholders. In general, people welcome this proposal. As for the detailed implementation of the proposal, we will communicate such information to stakeholders in future. Thank you. All right, that's it for the policy address briefing. I have heard feedback from different members, and most members are concerned about rodent control as well as pet-friendly options for bringing dogs to restaurants. And I urge the Bureau to consider the feedback and see if there is any need for improvement of measures. Thank you. Agenda item number 4. Any other business? There is no other business. Meeting adjourned.